2021. Anyway, we all have some questions in life, such as finding our authentic self, but it's a hard question to answer, isn't it? This afternoon, our speaker will be helping you discover your own version of authenticity by celebrating our differences and lessons to take forward in your career. Our speaker, Emma Jin, is currently the technology consulting manager at Accenture and has a background in studying chemistry as well as being a competitive salsa dancer. Ooh! She draws on her points of difference to challenge the status quo and promote the idea of being your authentic self. Now, please welcome Emma Jin.
Right. Oh, thank you so much for that lovely introduction. Hopefully I can live up to that amazing panel that's just been. Sounds like you guys have had an amazing discussion so far. Look, let me share my screen. Please feel free to drop on any comments as I discuss, any questions that you might have, and hopefully I'll be able to answer them a little bit later. So just bear with me a minute while I bring up my screen. All right. Alrighty, cool. All right. So firstly, I am so excited to be here today to speak with you all, and I hope you've had a wonderful day learning so far. Thanks so much to the organizers, especially Anne Louise, for giving me this opportunity. As it was said before, my name is Emma Jin. So I'm a technology consulting manager for Accenture. It's a global consulting firm. I actually graduated from the University of Canterbury in New Zealand with a BSc honours, and then from the ANU with an MPhil, both in organic chemistry. And I'm really excited to be here today to speak a little bit about my journey and what it means to be an authentic leader. We just heard from Michael at the end how, discovering himself and his voice was so important. And I'm hoping that through the next kind of 30 minutes or so, I can, share a little bit about my experiences, my journey, and maybe perhaps give you some tangible actions off the back of that. So just reflecting on the topic or the theme of this year's discussion or talks, reflect, redefine, and response. I love this, right? I truly, truly love this because we are really in some unsettling times in the world. But if I've learned anything in my time and journey so far, is that we can certainly reflect on everything that happens in our lives. We can learn and redefine ourselves and move through with action and intention in our response. I really hope that today in my talk, we'll show you some of the elements of how I've applied that into my life and how I believe that learning more about yourself and your version of authenticity will only help guide you through your journey. All right, so what I want to share today is a story about how being authentic and empathetic in our micro actions can lead to change. So I didn't start my career at Accenture as a grad, and suddenly I'm here speaking with you today, right? That things have happened in my life that have shaped my views, and no doubt you all will have stories that shape you today. And let's reflect on this quote a little bit here. To be nobody but yourself in a world which is doing its best night and day to make you everybody else means to fight the hardest battle which any human being can fight and never stop fighting. In an age and era where we are all craving connection and human interaction, how can you use your experiences to act in an authentic way? I also read something the other day that when people talk about traveling to the past, and look, perhaps this is only in pop culture, but they worry about radically changing the present by doing something small, but barely anyone in the present thinks that they can radically change the future by doing something small. So I hope you can walk away from this talk knowing that you have the ability to create change around you. I want to share how if we truly lean into who we are, we can be powerful in our own light, and that there is a place for empathy in any industry that we're working in, but particularly my chosen industry is the corporate world. So I want to humbly take you through a little journey of my own realizations and then perhaps provide some insights and tangible actions for you to start your own journey. Okay. I'm going to share a few little elements of my background on this little journey line here and how it's given me my perspectives on leadership. So I was born and raised in New Zealand to an immigrant single mother. So yeah, not quite an international student. Probably you can hear that based on my accent, but definitely can relate to a lot of those struggles coming to a new, having to be a little bit different. I've seen how my family had to struggle being an immigrant. So it was definitely challenging. And it was already unusual being, an Asian single mum in the 90s in Christchurch, New Zealand. So if anyone's been to Christchurch, even today, it's not the most diverse place, and certainly not in the neighborhood I grew up in. I was the only actually non-international student who was of Chinese descent in my year level in high school. And look, I really excelled. There were occasions where I was bullied a little, but it's high school. And for the most part, they treated me really well. And a credit to my high school, I went to an all-girls school. I was never made to feel like I couldn't be or do anything I wanted to be in life, right? And look, I studied quite hard and I was fairly successful. Fast forward 5 years or so, I finished my honours year in New Zealand, lived through an earthquake, which had its own traumas, and yesterday was certainly a reminder of that. And for those of you in Melbourne, I hope you're okay. But look, I've got a PhD scholarship at the ANU in Canberra to study. This was actually the first time I struggled. Some of you guys might relate to this story, actually. So I didn't feel accepted. I was living alone for the first time, away from home. I felt culture shock, and I'm even coming from New Zealand to Australia, I felt culture shock. My PhD supervisor didn't really understand my needs or his responsibility for pastoral care. I actually decided not to finish my PhD, and I changed to a master's degree despite some external and familial pressures. Some of you might relate to that as well, and I'll touch a little bit on that a little bit later. But this was the first time I actually experienced quote unquote, and I quote it for a very valid reason, but this is the first time I experienced failure. Fast forward another 5 years, I'm actually now a technology consulting manager at Accenture. So I'm actually, doing pretty well for myself by all conventional means, working on very large digital transformations, building portfolios, practicing what I preach, trying to build a really inclusive and diverse workforce, calling people out for their unconscious bias. And you know what? COVID-19 has not been without its challenges. I'm sure everyone feels the same in this day and age. But alongside those obvious challenges, actually the hardest for me was I going through some medical issues, a really challenging breakup, and not being able to go home to see my family for nearly 3 years. And I think some of you may relate to the not being able to be around your loved ones. It's definitely some challenging times, and I really hope you guys are doing okay through this hardship. And look, through this little journey of mine, I've given you a bit of a rapid fire of the last decade or so in my life. Did I really think I was going to be here? No, not really. I mean, do you know what? When I started university, I thought I was going to be a high school teacher. Then I thought I was going to be a researcher. And now I work for Accenture. Did I think I would be here? Absolutely not. But have they shaped me? 100%. I've learned so many things along the way that have shaped my version of leadership, the way that I think, and things that I'm actually going to discuss in my next slide. So I've told these abridged versions of my story for a reason. As the talk alludes to, this is me owning my story and my journey into authenticity and authentic leadership, right? So these are probably the biggest parts of my life so far. And, like I said earlier, I think we would agree that our experiences shape who we are. So I've got 3 concepts here that are kind of core to my DNA, my leadership DNA, as I call it, and then my essentials. So the first one there, intersectionality. So I grew up different to most of my peers. Michael already kind of mentioned he is the only Chinese person in his workplace right now. So I really felt like I was, surrounded by a lot of people that didn't look like me. I'm a Chinese New Zealander who identifies as a woman. I always knew I was a little bit different, but I didn't quite understand why or how. In hindsight, my friends were allowed to do things I wasn't allowed to do. The only Chinese girl in primary school became my best friend. When I was younger, it really didn't cross my mind that looking different also meant I thought different, and why I didn't feel like I belonged. And you know what? Why the closest people and my closest friends in high school were kind of the misfits and the nerds, because I kind of was a misfit. Until I moved to Melbourne and surrounded by many other Asian people born in the Western world, did I really put those pieces together about how important inclusion and diversity means growing up, and also, also being a part of the workforce as well, right? To be part of a multicultural accepting culture pulls you out of that echo chamber. It's how you build that acceptance. And this is how intersectionality really impacted me. So intersectionality, for those of you who don't know this term, it's a term coined in 1989 by a woman, Professor Kimberly Cresswell, and it refers to the ways in which different aspects of a person's identity can expose them to overlapping forms of discrimination and marginalization. How this becomes important to building an inclusive environment or workforce is that if people take a step back, they're likely to understand a different perspective or needs, and they're likely to feel more valued. For me, being a Chinese New Zealander woman coming from a lower socioeconomic background means I have a different lived experience to many of my peers. My ideas could be different, the way I act in the workplace could be different. Doesn't make me any less professional or capable just because I'm not identical to the majority. So we should definitely celebrate each other's differences. And if you guys reflect on your journeys as well, right? I encourage you to embrace that multicultural element that you'll have being an international student. That will only make your experiences more rich and will only serve you well as you take all those experiences and those learnings on in your journey. That the one on my left there, empathy. So I struggled through my PhD program. And look, for those of you that are studying a PhD program, we know it's a hard go. And, power to all of you guys that are doing that and almost on the finish line. And I hope you guys take some time to reflect on that journey and that decision to go through that, because, it was super, super tough for me. And it actually took me 4 years to realize it wasn't me. So for those of you that are in a PhD program is 4 years. I didn't even have enough work to finish, but I was actually really quite depressed. And it was a really big challenge for me to quit. So I definitely had a lot of conversations. I spoke to a psychologist. That milestone, trying to get over all of that shame and all of those feelings that I had, was a big challenge for me to quit. But again, this shaped part of my story, right? Because it made me realize that, this quote unquote failure that I talk about is a part of life, and that there was so much more to struggling through a career path that just wasn't for me. I was so deeply unhappy. And if I've learned anything through that, it honestly showed me that I have to be the maker of my own destiny. I couldn't respond to anyone but myself at the end of the day, right? I have to be the one feeling fulfilled in my life. And I had to recognize that I was more than these external accolades, that having kindness to myself was just as important as the empathy that I showed to others. And it made me appreciate that, everyone has their path and journey to where they got to in their lives, just like me, and to take that moment to reflect on their stories. You might assume that given my career or my chosen field that I have so much experience or background in commerce or IT, but I actually don't. And, that's not what brought me here today. And you know what, I'm more than happy to discuss about my journey and how I got to Accenture as well. But, likely many of those around you at uni, at work, your social circles, they will all have some kind of similar story. And you know what? Certainly the people of color or other forms of marginalization will also have a story to tell. All right, so the one on the right there, authenticity. So I've learned, particularly this past year, that through COVID, is how gratitude and authenticity will bring you what you need in your life. The right people, the right work, the right energy. And the things that are not for you are never meant to stay. And it carves a path for new opportunities and things to come into your life. I mean, I struggle with this concept a lot. I believe it, but sometimes my head has a bit of a mind of its own. But I truly do believe that, right? And I think that this concept, can be applied in your professional life as you move forward. If I think about my professional life at the moment, when I have been able to be myself is, when I've done the best work and been the best leader that I can be. When I've leaned into my strengths and my light, when doors have started to open. This is the connections that you build. I'm here speaking with you today because I have a contact. I was brave enough to reach out when this contact said that they were looking for speakers for this event. And when I've opened up to my teams and to people as well, even here, I'm hoping that I'm connecting with you. But it's when I connect with people the most is when I open up. But this is really, really hard. Being able to show that you're struggling, to show that strength, knowing resilience is persevering when you thought that you couldn't. Oh, it's so hard. There have been so many times this past year, even this past week, where I've just felt like, how can I keep going? It's been so hard. And when I open up, when I share my experiences, when I talk to my friends, when I reach out to my psychologist, that's, the moments where I bring it back and realize that I'm worthy. I'm grateful. I'm grateful to be here today. And you know what? We are taught that vulnerability is a weakness. And, it is so far from that. If I reflect on my leaders that I love to work with and the leaders I've seen in my life, my teachers, all of those people, it's, the ones that I've seen have been successful with followers is those who do open up with those experiences, those that their authenticity seemingly make them more human and relatable. Because look, we all have these failures, lessons that we've learned in our lives, things that haven't gone so well, right? So why do we hide that? So as the title of this talk alludes to, these so-called soft skills are the ones that I believe have shaped my leadership style, and in my opinion, create some of the best leaders and best teams. Authentic leadership comes from recognizing your own story, the good, the bad, triumphs, heartbreaks, wins, losses, strengths, weaknesses, and everything in between. It means putting your ego aside. It means understanding yourself and your teams. It means operating from a place of empathy, recognizing intersectionality. Authentic leadership comes from being able to accept yourself first freely and then look at others without judgment and unconscious bias. And I back my essentials, right? They make me who I am. They've shaped my version of leadership. Your journey in life may give you different leadership essentials and values. That's okay too. That's what makes your version of leadership special. Okay, so why do I think authenticity and essence, my three essentials, are important in the workplace? I wanted to give you some statistics and data to support my story. So I'm a consultant. I've got to back it up with data. And there's some research that actually came out from McKinsey recently. They said that companies are increasingly focused on developing social, emotional, and advanced cognitive skills to build a more skilled post-pandemic workforce. So the research said skills companies prioritize most are leadership and managing others, critical thinking and decision-making, and project management. This suggests that in addition to wanting to be a more employee-centric workforce, organizations are still coming to grip with the new ways of working that is being forced on them by COVID. These challenges are only going to grow. They also estimated that the demand for social and emotional skills, the ones that machines can't master, will increase 25% in the United States alone over the next decade. If there is a need for more people-centric organizations and future-proofing your skill set, wouldn't being more authentic and having empathy be the key? Okay, just to bring it home, more research from BCG said inclusive cultures have healthier and happier workers. So this research, was based on a leadership survey done by BCG, conducted late last year. Quite a number of people, 16,000 people, 16 countries, a mixture of full-time and part-time employees, with organizations with over 1,000 people. And so the research found that the levels of inclusiveness had a direct impact on employees' happiness and well-being. Of employees who reported that they work in an inclusive culture, 81% also said that they are happy in their jobs, 3 times more than those who didn't feel included. Actively hiding part of their identity at work hinders employees from thriving and translates into higher job dissatisfaction and lower confidence. Yeah, look, of course, all of this exemplifies what I've been discussing, right? Being your authentic self and being able to be your authentic self makes for a better work culture. And modeling authenticity and empathy creates this environment for people to feel encouraged to act in the same way. And so if, just to be a really tangible example, I actually lead the inclusion and diversity practice for tech advisory within strategy and consulting in Accenture. And we have very clear milestones. We have very clear statistics and goals that we are trying to meet to make Accenture a really great place to work. So these things that, companies are really wanting, inclusivity, diversity, equity, authenticity, they are truly things that we are trying to grow in the working world, and definitely things that you should try to lean into as you look into the workforce. Yeah, look, so I'm obviously talking about it from my perspective as a corporate person, but I wanted to touch on what does leadership actually look like as well, right? We often hear terms being used to describe leadership like decisiveness, integrity, problem solving, dependability, charisma, or you have to be masculine or extroverted. So what makes a leader? Is it vision? Is it skill? Is it experience? Regardless of industry, I believe we are all seeking one thing in these challenging times. I already mentioned it before, right? Human connection. If this talk has taught you anything so far, I want you to take away that leadership can be soft, it can be gentle, and it can be empathetic. And like I said before, those leaders that can connect with people, those are the ones that we want to follow. Those are the ones that I want to follow. My mentor at work is one of the most open people to me, has taught me all of these things, has taught me that, you don't have to be particularly, masculine to be successful. I can lean into my vulnerability and femininity to be successful. I also want to make note that leadership doesn't mean that you have to be the CEO of a company or a formal manager like myself. In fact, I actually don't manage day to day. I don't manage a very large team. In fact, it's a misconception that being a manager for consulting firms means you manage a team. You can, but I am a leader in my organization, and you can be a leader in any facet of your life. You don't have to have a formal capacity to be a good influence into other people. You can be a leader in your friendship group, your sports team, faith, religion. And being a good leader means also being able to know when to follow. And so as you move in your career and start thinking about the leader you want to be or the leader that you're becoming, whatever path that you choose, please remember some of the things I've expressed about softness, empathy, understanding each other, understanding yourself better. And these traits will only serve you well. Okay, so I've talked a lot. I like to talk. Hopefully, we're going to get a little bit interactive soon if there's a bit of time. And I haven't seen the comments come through. Sorry, as I share screen. So I'm hopeful that there's some great comments and questions for me as well. But I want to give you some tips on how to future-proof yourself as you move forward into your career. So craft and own your own story as you enter new phases in your life, and use every turn as lessons. So I kind of had three main phases in my life, right? I didn't have very much control as a kid. I grew up with an Asian mum, right? I had very little control over that. But, there were things, as I reached into my 30s, looking back into my childhood, those are lessons that definitely taught me a lot of things. And they're things that I reflect on as, are the things that I learned, the stories that I want to continue in my life, and the stories that I want to take into, my potential family as I get older as well. And, each of the phases that I've chosen, each of these decisions that I've made in my life have taught me things. And, through this pandemic, it's given me a great opportunity to reflect on that and give these three essentials and this the story behind these talks that I give about authenticity. So use them as you, reflect on the moments that happen in your life, reflect on, your childhood, your high school, your uni years, whatever you move forward, and use them as lessons. So say yes to opportunities. Never be afraid to try something new. And in fact, what I want to say here really is don't be afraid to fail. The things that have gone completely not to plan in my life have been the most joyous, also some of the most heartbreaking, but also some of the things that I've learned the most in life. And like I said, right, the things that are not meant for you are not meant to stay. But those are lessons that you'll forever take in your life. And, I've been reflecting on the last few years with so much joy and pain and everything in between. And I know for a fact that once we are hopefully allowed out again, I know that I will just become a stronger person and grow and learn and be able to share more stories with people like yourselves. Okay, learn to put that ego aside, man. So that ego, I have an ego too. I definitely did in my 20s. But put that aside, because you are nothing without your team. You are nothing without asking for people for help. And you are nothing, without the people around you as well, right? To build you up, to help you be stronger. And you have lessons that you can teach the people around you just as much as they can teach you as well. So that is one of the biggest things that I've seen in the work that I've done. And in fact, in any aspect of my life is that, the people that I love being around are those that just want to be a team. And likely that's the same for many of you. Recognize your strengths, accept your weaknesses. So in Accenture, actually, we leverage something called Gallup Strengths. And please look that up. It might be very interesting to you guys. But we actually focus very heavily on our strengths and how we leverage those, acknowledging that our strengths also come with, areas that may be our blind spots. But, those strengths are what makes you you. My strengths are what make me me. And so much through my upbringing did I always feel like, and maybe this is just being a high achieving, overachieving Asian person, but I always felt like I could do more, or I wasn't good enough, or that I was failing, right? That A wasn't good enough. I needed to get an A plus. Sorry, New Zealanders do A's and A pluses still. This, I know you guys have HDs here, but I was never, I remember coming home and my mum being like, why is your handwriting in your exam so messy? I always felt like perhaps I wasn't quite good enough. But as I get a little bit older, it's again, that teamwork element is very strong in me, right? My strengths are my strengths, and they come easily to me, but that doesn't mean that they don't come easily, that it might not be hard for someone else. Just because I'm good at one thing doesn't mean it's actually easy. It could be very, very hard for someone else. Just like, making an Excel spreadsheet will just drive me batty. I can't do that. But I know that that's someone else's strength. So, recognize those strengths and accept that your weaknesses don't make you any less of a person. I've already said this, lean into vulnerability as a strength and not a weakness. Me being vulnerable to you today is me owning that story, owning who I am. I hope that you guys don't see me as anything, other than being strong by speaking to you about these stories. And lead from compassion and empathy. So I've already kind of discussed that. I just think that the way that we can connect with people, particularly in these hard times, is through empathy, and nothing else. We can only relate to each other and the pain that we're all going through right now. And I think that as leaders, we should try to lean into that experience more. All right, so I've talked for a long time. I don't know how much time I have left, but I wanted to also give you do a little bit of an activity. So please whip out your phones. I'm sure you guys have your phones on you. Scan the QR code. If COVID has taught us anything, it's how to use QR codes. Or you can enter menti.com and use the voting code there. I'm not sure if you guys have used Menti before, but we're going to do a little activity. And this activity is for you to understand yourself better, for us to understand us as a team better. And as you go into your networking sessions, hopefully you can, maybe this is a nice talking point. But for those of you who don't know, this is a bit of a diversity wheel developed by someone named Marilyn Loden, and identifies the many aspects of diversity. So you have your internal, external, and your organizational dimensions. So those internal dimensions are likely the ones that you were born with. So age, gender, sexual orientation, physical ability, those are the things that you will likely have little influence over. Those external dimensions are ones that you do have a little bit more control over, and the organizational ones are a really good way to sort of identify what are the things that you are looking for the right cultural fit in your organization. So, all right, I'm going to get out of this and I'm going to share the okay, all right, let me just try and find this. All right. Oh, I'm already seeing some little bubbles coming through. That's amazing. All right, cool. Amazing. All right, cool. Can you guys see this? Oh my gosh. I might have to refresh it. Sorry. Okay, this is not working. It's now frozen. Okay, good. All right, good. All right. I love seeing these things come in, but my computer is a little bit slow, so you have to bear with me a bit. I'm going to read some of these comments now as I see these. All right, I love seeing everyone, so please keep sending those through. I'm going to read some of these comments. How do you stay motivated to educate the community about gender equality in a conservative state and strong religious practices that may hinder your passion? I don't have a very good, I guess, perspective on this because I don't really have a religion that I follow, and maybe someone else on a call can respond to that one. But I will say though, in in my organization and etc. There has been a really strong change for cultural fit. And when I first joined the consulting world, it definitely wasn't the same level of acceptance than it is today. And the way that I stay motivated is knowing that I want to make the place a better place for me to be a part of always. I want to be a better part of the world. I want to be part of change. And so my personal objective is very outcome focused. And so I try to do that, right? And as you kind of mature as well, and learn more things and more things to help yourself, you learn different ways to influence, is what I've learned. So you learn how to, what we call in consulting, manage your stakeholders. So you learn the triggers that are going to influence people to see your perspective. But, in a religion, that's hard because you've got a lot of historic, systemic things that are kind of working as well. But you to stay strong yourself and find people around you that do support you. And not everyone will see your strengths and everything around you, but you will likely find people that do see a little bit of what you see, and to follow those. All right, I'm going to click to the next one because I've seen a few stop now. If this is not freezing on me. Oh. All right. Sorry, guys. It's so slow. I don't even know. I seem like I might be a bit slow here as well. All right. So there's a next wheel here. So which ones do you feel like this might not be as oh, I think I've gone too far. Sorry. Let me go back one. There we go. External dimensions. This one I think you will relate to. Oh, those are for the keynote. I still answered it. My apologies. All right. Okay. I clearly can't read. Sorry, Anne-Louise. How do you translate your skill set or experiences from organic chemistry education into the corporate realm? Okay. Cool. All right. Great question. I was very much a great question. So my journey into the corporate world is very interesting. I decided to quit, and was like, okay, I need to find a job. And I kind of Googled what kind of job can I have with a chemistry degree, and they said to me, you can consulting. And so I kind of applied for a few different consulting firms, and Accenture hired me. And the way that I translate those skill sets or experiences is I always kind of bring that back to that curiosity and the desire to learn, the desire to want to make a difference, and that level of problem solving has never really changed, and I think that sort of helped me through, and guided me through it, because I'm always trying to understand the so what. So when I was an organic chemist, it was very much, how do I make this molecule? What does it mean? Is it important? And when I look at the corporate world as well, it's very much the same as that, right? So how do I make this successful for my clients? How do I get to the next step? How do I do that? How do I do this? So yeah, that's kind of how I've leveraged those skill sets. I hope that answered the question. Girl, cool. All right, scroll down. Were there any other questions? I can't even follow these ones, sorry. Someone might have to help me here. I have a lot of lag. Okay, I'm really sorry.
Hi, Emma. Thank you for a wonderful word, and thank you for sharing such an inspirational journey with us. So,
yes, Dayden, please help me. I'm getting confused.
Yes. So, I have a questions for myself. So, in terms of because right now for the cross-cultural,
I might actually pause this because I feel like the Minty is just creating havoc. So I'm just going to stop my screen. But yes. Thank you for all. That might be a bit better. Hi, someone to talk to.
Hi.
I need your help because I clearly answered answered the wrong question. So I clearly need your help.
Of course, yeah, definitely. I can help you. So in terms of the questions, I was wondering, so what advice would you give to international students in terms of like improving the cross-cultural connections? Because we all know for international student, we are in a cross diversity community. So for us, maybe we can get some tips from you for the cross-cultural communications. How can we improve that?
Yeah, I kind of mentioned a few things earlier about trying not to be in that echo chamber. And by echo chamber, I think we have a bit of a tendency to want to work with the same people, look at maybe be in a group assignments with the same people. And I think that sort of we lend ourselves into going a bit of spiraling a little bit. And I think what's really helpful and useful is to be brave and kind of open up that avenue and try to connect with others. And I think a really good way of doing that is being really vulnerable and being really authentic, right? So it is hard, it is tricky, but those networks, your tutorials, those things, those are really great opportunities for you to be brave and put your hand up and ask the questions. And the first step starts with you, right? If you are brave enough to do that, other people will be inspired to do that too.
Yeah, that's
I think the
very
lag
true.
is better, right? I think the lag is better now that I've stopped the diversity wheel, right? Sorry, guys. I really wanted to be interactive here, but clearly it wasn't working.
Yes, that's very true. I totally agree with you. So in terms of producing positive social impact, so what advice you would give to international students for making their first step?
For making a positive social impact.
Yes.
So, great question as well. I think you've got to find what your passion is first, right? Because I think the last panel, if I'm not mistaken, was about finding your passion. Because I think if you're not passionate about something, you're not going to want to act on it. You're not going to want to drive it. So for me, inclusion and diversity is really, really important because I want to build an inclusive and diverse workforce. So that is my passion in life and work and everything. And I think to establish that social impact first, you've got to find what you want to do, your passion. And then I think, if I reflect back on my times in university, there were so many teams and social activities and communities and all those types of things you can get involved with, right? And I think Ritika also mentioned getting involved with City of Melbourne. There are so many opportunities, but I think that first element is what is important to you? What is your passion? How do you want to change the world, right? And we don't think one person can change the world, but we can. And you know what? Changing the world doesn't mean you have to change everything. That means you change 5 people around you, and those 5 people change 5 people. Those 5 people change, and that's how you create that effect.